You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Today's show is sponsored by Dr. Jacalyn. Take charge of your life personally, financially, and professionally. Visit drjacalyn.com to book an appointment today.
Hello, and welcome to Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, live here on Business Talk Radio. We have the business talk show for you, and we're so glad that you've joined us. You can find us here every Wednesday on Business Talk Radio, Studio 6, and also Facebook, YouTube, and soon to come, LinkedIn Live. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce my co-host, my friend, my partner, Mr. Cini. Welcome to the program, Mr. Cini.
Don't let anybody in here. How you doing, Dr. Jacalyn? It's nice to be here.
I'm doing really well. It's great to see you. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to Wednesdays with you because it's so informative, and you brought us a wonderful guest today, so do tell.
This is Linda Descano. She'll be coming out in a little bit. Linda Descano is an expert in messaging in the business world. And I don't think a lot of people really appreciate that words are things, that words convey energy, that words are solid, that they have substance. So most people, when they craft messages for their employees or they craft messages for their customers, they kind of shoot from the hip. They don't always say what they really intended to say, and sometimes that can get them in trouble. And complicate that a little bit with this thing called COVID that we're all enduring. And the messaging we send to the outside world and the inside world has to be consistent. It has to be impactful. It has to be accurate and authentic. And that's what Linda does at Red Havas. Red Havas, by the way, is one of the world's premier public relations firms and very well known worldwide. And she's an executive vice president at Red Havas.
Well, I can't wait to bring her out after the first commercial break. It's hard to wait, but we do have to hear from our friends and pay a few bills, right?
We do. But before we take that break, I wanted to ask you, I know as an individual, as a personal coach, as an executive coach, one of your jobs is to help people find their voice.
Yes.
How do you do that?
It's interesting. I've been working with people from all different generations, and what I found is people are so consumed by anxiety that they can't find their voice to just tag on to what you said. And so what I try to help them do is to address what it is that this fear is coming from. And I just had a person I worked with. She sent me the nicest email message last night that she followed through with what I'd asked her to do. And she had been kind of isolated from a number of her friends. And so I gave her some suggestions to find her voice, and she did. And now they've reconnected. So it was definitely something that was she was certainly capable of doing before, but she wasn't ready to do it. So we worked together to try to talk through some of the things that were really holding her back and causing her to not be her full authentic self.
Well, yeah, I think an awful lot of people experience an emotion. You mentioned fear. I can think of anger, frustration, desperation sometimes. An awful lot of people feel an emotion, and that triggers a vocal response. Somewhere between the emotional reaction that you're experiencing and the vocal response that it elicits, there ought to be a place to insert your brain to think a little bit about what you're about to say. I don't think that a lot of people, and probably this is also true of a lot of organizations, really don't insert that mindful step in between the emotion and the expression that they need to in order to craft that message correctly. So I think it's great that you help do that with individuals. And when we get Linda out here, we'll talk about how she helps organizations do that.
How do you at BCAT help teams?
Well, yeah, our job, and we like to refer to us as climbing a mountain sometimes. And actually, Linda and we climb the same mountain, but along two different faces. The ultimate goal of what Linda does and what we do with BCAT is to align an organization's internal voice with its external voice. The way you express yourself to your people ought to be congruent with the way you express yourself in the marketplace. Because what we've learned, and believe me, all we've done is remind ourselves of lessons that were taught a long time ago. People buy from you and they want to work for you for the same reason. whether they're buying from you or they want to join you and work with you, they're doing that because they feel it'll make them a better version of themselves. So communicating that better version of self that you represent, both to new employees and to prospects, clients, prospective clients, or if you're a not-for-profit, there are donors out there, benefactors out there. Aligning those two messages is really what we're about. We use a particular scientific approach to do that.
Well, and I love what you said about elevating your brand. That's why I wanted to work with you as my co-host.
Well, I appreciate you think that I make that contribution. It's certainly my pleasure to work with you.
So I think we should take a break now because I really want to get Linda out here. Is that okay with you?
She's starting with a word game. I can't wait. I want to play along.
I can't wait either. And, actually, I wanted to mention that we have a new sponsor today. Somebody I really appreciate and respect. Her name is Mindy Thomas, and we're going to play her sponsorship ad. All right, here we go. We'll be back. Stay with us here on Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, live on Business Talk Radio and social media.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mindy Thomas, founder of Thomas Career Consulting. If you are dealing with the stress of having been terminated or being laid off, considering a career change, or you simply cannot land a job with your current resume, you came to the right place. My professional expertise centers on being trained in two distinct areas: career counseling and career marketing. I am also the host of Career Chat, a weekly talk show which appears on RVN TV. My end game is helping you to overcome the self-doubt, the fear, and the other barriers you are facing right now in a very tricky, perplexing, and complicated job market. .5 seconds. That's how much time it takes a recruiter to scan your resume. On top of that, electronic applicant tracking systems may reject you even if you have the skills, education, and experience. I teach you how to win when you absolutely have to. My resume writing practice is built on a personalized, collaborative, and strategic approach that showcases your accomplishments in a way to get you noticed. At the center of my strategy is identifying your strengths and targeted keywords to make you stand out from the competition. As a professional resume writer, I know what it takes to impress even the most discriminating hiring manager. Changing careers, launching a new one, overwhelmed or stuck in a dead-end job? I have more than 2 decades of experience as a Georgetown-trained leadership coach, resume writer, career counselor, and recruiter. So whether you're a student, a top executive, or simply struggling to find your own career identity and you're feeling lost, you can count on me to lead you through the journey of self-discovery. I will formulate a step-by-step plan that begins with the assessment of your skills, your interests, your values, and your personality, and then explore the opportunities that are best suited to align with you. In essence, what makes sense for you? With 25 years of business experience, I have been privileged to work with a diverse group of adults, from young high school students to the millennials, the generation X, Y, and Z, and boomers. Let me put that to work for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Welcome back to Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, live here on Business Talk Radio, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live. I am joined today by Mr. Al Cini. And Al, our special guest, I'll give you the honor of introducing her.
I'd like everybody to meet Linda Descano. Linda is an executive vice president at Red Havas. She's forgotten more about corporate messaging than most people ever knew. And she's always a great resource to have on any program to talk about how you craft a message that has the effect you want, while avoiding a lot of the unintended consequences of mindless communication. She's really, really expert at that. And here we are in the middle of COVID, and now is a perfect time to talk about how to up your game from a communications point of view. So welcome, Linda Descano. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Great to see you, Al, and thank you, Dr. Jacalyn, for having me on today.
Absolutely. I just want to start off with giving the phone number if people want to call in out there in Radio Land. We would love to hear from you. The number to call in is area code 631-730-5468. And we'd also love to hear from you if you're out there on Facebook or YouTube and Twitch. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention to our friends on Twitch, we have some followers there. So please feel free to put your comments there in the comment section, and we will read them on air.
Great. So Linda, when we pre-interviewed, we spent a few minutes getting ready for today's conversation. You mentioned you played a word game with the people inside your own company, I guess with the members of your own team and a few people you know?
We did, in fact, because as you were talking about earlier, as a communications agency, we spend a lot of time thinking about words. And so we were talking about all the things that came out of our mouths this year that we never thought we would say. I love that mask. Where did you get it? You're on mute. I miss my morning commute. Do you wash your groceries before you put them away? Right. And so that got us really intrigued. And we looked, and, every year around this time, Merriam-Webster and dictionary.com and the Oxford Dictionary all select their word of the year. And this year, Merriam-Webster and dictionary.com selected pandemic. The Oxford Dictionary couldn't select a word. They sort of highlighted 4. Not surprising, mail-in, pandemic, unmute, coronavirus, and lockdown. So yeah, we decided to poll our colleagues and see what word as communicators they thought described 2020. And to my surprise, no one coalesced around a single word or phrase. In fact, there were more than 70 words put forward. The couple of words that kind of rose to the top were pivot and unprecedented. So kind of describing the fluid and dynamic nature of our life as we've come to know it. And then the second tier was Zoom, virtual, and digital. Sure. Not surprising, given how our lives went from being solely immersed in the physical world to being more digital than we ever would have, expected. And then we saw sort of these buckets of words, some around our feelings. So everything from isolated and anxious and unprepared to purposeful, resilient, and connected. A lot of words like unprecedented, that like the magnitude of how our lives have changed, inconceivable, cataclysmic, and then the fluidity, so agility and flexibility. So it really got us thinking. And then you also think about words that are taking on a whole new meaning, right? Zoom has become a verb these days. It's not just a brand. We think of how the word woke has been redefined, how we talk about the word mute. So there's a new lexicon for this new era that we find ourselves in. So it's generated a lot of conversation, and I'd love to put you both on this spot. And, what's your word of 2020?
Jacalyn, you go first.
Well, I went through a few, some of which you'd already mentioned, and I always like to be positive. So my word would be opportunity.
I think that's a great word. I like word. the idea of pivot or turning point. So I resonate with that word. I remember we talked about that. I guess I would probably use transition or turning point as my word, I think.
Well, and I think you captured what many organizations, many nonprofits, many for-profit companies are approaching it, because it is an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity for a reset. In many ways, this crisis, and so many have suffered so much, but there's also been this great coming together of public and private resources to help support communities. And I think in many respects, especially for companies that have gone deep to revisit their purpose and being asked to put their purpose to the test and prove their purpose. So it's been an interesting time. I think we've reset expectations of each other, of what we expect from companies as contributors to the community, what we expect of government to be part of the solution. So I think it's both an opportunity, but also a turning point, a new pivot into and maybe a period of never normal or a new normal with changing expectations, because we've been in this life for 9 months now. I think many of us, it's become a new routine. And I see that our expectations of the flexibility we might have of work, of what we expect to hear from companies and their involvement in the community, I don't see that as going away. I think if anything, it will become a bigger part of the conversation going forward.
It's such a great point. As you were expressing that, I was thinking of something I heard on television the other day. It's unusual for a talking head to actually make sense. But one person actually said, if you think 2021 is about getting back to 2019, then you missed the whole point of 2020.
Exactly.
2020 was supposed to teach you a lesson. So, and when I was a kid, I remember a lot of what my mother told me. A single mom raised in a single mom family. My mother was a major figure in my life. I know you're going to talk about your grandmother a little later on. You've got some great stories to tell about her. But my mother once told me that the only thing you know about the future is that you can't remember it. Don't try to remember your way into the future, because the future is about new stuff. It's not about the stuff you remember. So when you talked a little while ago about reconnecting with purpose and remembering why it was you started your company in the first place, and maybe 2020 was the lesson we need, how do you help companies do that, Linda?
Yeah, very much. It's probably very similar to, what Dr. Jacalyn was saying about working with an individual. You have to start and take an audit, right, of who you are, right, what your values are, what you stand for. Think about the service you bring to your customers, to your community, to your employees, and look at your actions and audit. Do your actions, are they consistent with those values and principles, with that mission statement you may have written 10 years ago? What are you hearing, and what have you heard through different touch points about how you're perceived by all those different stakeholders? And I like to say, do gap, and really understand what you're doing well, where there is a gap or a disconnect. And then as an organization, whether you're an organization of 5 people or 500,000 people, where do you want to move forward? And then how are you going to operationalize that sense of purpose? How are you going to measure it? How are you going to talk about it in a way that is meaningful to your different audiences? And finding those points that are true. If you're an organization that perhaps sells, outdoor clothing, it makes sense to be very active in conservation and outdoors things. So it's also finding those points of alignment with what you do as a business, but also what your employees and the communities where you operate, what they care about. And then how do you put the right programs and measurement tools in place? How do you message it in a way that makes sense? And you build that whole infrastructure around it.
I love how when you mentioned earlier about community and everything that you're talking about, what I think is something that is really positive about this experience, that it's collective, is that you can reach out to anyone. Whereas before, I know myself, there's certain people I would never reach out to because of their title, or, they're not in the United States. But now, since everybody's going through this, people really want to help one another. And I think when you're looking at organizations and how they're pivoting and changing, we have the whole world to reach out and help us craft our message, really, so we can draw an experience that maybe we wouldn't have been able to before.
That's such a great point, because as much as we were all, we had all the technology tools available to us, right? We were very sort of location centric, but through this experience, everyone around the world, pretty much, except for those blessed frontline and essential workers who are supporting and enabling us all to continue to do what we do. We were all working from home, right? We're all engaging and bridging that professional and personal. And so it has, I think, made many of our conversations more intimate, more authentic. We're all in the same sort of more similar footing. And that has built a sense of community, whether you're working with someone who lives down the road or across the big pond in Europe or the UK, you all feel like absolutely more connected. I think this is a sense, because it's such a global challenge, that all of us have to do our part. And it's been really inspiring to see so many people and companies come together and find solutions, whether they're manufacturing, turning their factories over to manufacture PPE, to how can they use their supply chain to support getting materials to those in need, to financial donations, to creating programs to help. There's been just so much upside, and it shows when we come together just the power of what can be done.
Wow. Well, Linda, you also mentioned in our pre-interview that we're moving away from the business to business model and the business to consumer model, which is one of the ways we use to segment the way we message our products and our services. And you're saying it's kind of giving way now to a more personal communication model. Isn't that right?
I am. We call it P2P, or person-to-person communications, because whether you're selling to a business or an individual, at the end, there's always someone at the other side of the transaction, at the conversation. And I think today we all want to be engaged as individuals and have a much more personal, authentic, real conversation. And very often B2B companies focus on the problem, and the solution versus the person on the other end. And so what we encourage B2B companies to do is really to focus on the person and how they could be part of the solution and enable that person, but to really make that human connection. And we're seeing, whether it's in our personal life or in our work life, we want similar experiences. We want people, brands, to meet us where we are intellectually, right? Emotionally, where we are digitally, and give us a seamless experience that's very tailored to who we are, how we think, and and what is of importance to us in making some type of purchasing decision. Whether it's about we're buying a home, to we're buying a coat, to we have to make a decision about enterprise software. We want to have that very relatable experience.
Interesting. In the very beginning of the pandemic, I remember that everybody was afraid to sell anything. They were afraid to go out with their traditional messaging of buy this shirt, buy this coat, buy this car. Consumerism seemed like it had died in the middle of this kind of mess that we were finding ourselves in. I think we're finally getting back to the point where we can start talking about doing business and offering value to people and getting them to give us money in exchange for that. But we have to be careful. We really do have to be careful how we do that. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. I mean, I think every organization really has to keep a pulse on their customers, where their customers are, what is most important for their customers today, what's top of mind, what are the considerations, the constraints they're operating under, and then contextualize, their sales or their marketing message in a way that can be heard, that's relevant and acknowledges, where that customer is today, which is very different than where the customer's headspace, perhaps the state of their business, the state of their household finances were 6, 7, 8 months ago. So it's important to have those constant feedback loops and adapt the message and really test and learn to see what is resonating and what isn't.
And you know what, Linda, what I also think is interesting, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, is many people whom I've met this year, I've never met. So I didn't meet them in person. I met them on Zoom. I met them through somebody else on some other platform. And yet you feel this sense of trust again, because we're all going through the same experience, and people share with you things that they might not have shared with you before, whether it's about their emotional state, or it's about their health, or it's about their finances. And I found that I've built relationships with people whom I really trust and I want to win. So what are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree. I've experienced the same thing with colleagues, and as well as with clients, with new business prospects, and just through networking introductions, that I don't know if it's because we're all in our personal space, and your cat, your dog, your child may all join the conversation at different points, but it feels like the way we're interacting, because we're in our personal space, we've crossed some divide and are more willing to open up and bring our full self to the conversation. And it feels like a safer space to talk more deeply about some of the issues that we're contending with. And I've had people open up about very personal stories that I don't think would have ever happened if I was doing a video conference from my office. So I do think that we've created a different sense of connectivity and intimacy. And my hope is that will help us all be stronger colleagues, better partners, better family members, because so much of us are also using Zoom for family connections. But it's helping us, deal with some of the isolation that comes from various lockdowns and periods of quarantine, and gives us that sense of community, which will be so important to get us through, the next months, year or so, until there's greater access to a vaccine.
Absolutely. This is really good discussion, and I know there's so much more. We need to take a break, but before we do, I just want to acknowledge Mindy. She's out there in Vegas. She moved recently, and she's living a really cool life out there. So thank you for your sponsorship, Mindy, and thank you for your comments. It's always great to hear from you. So we're just going to take a break for a few minutes here, and we'll be back on Wrapping with Dr. Jacalyn. And we've got a great guest with Linda, and Al's our host. Stay with us. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Hey everybody, my name is Ralph Graves Jr. I'm the host of the Ralph Graves Jr. Show, and I want to invite you to pick up my book, Unstoppable. I wrote a book called Unstoppable. It's 7 universal laws that will transform how you pursue and achieve success. The one thing that my 20 years of law enforcement has taught me is that no matter who you are, we are all governed by universal laws, like gravity. But in this book, we're going to talk about laws like the law of forgiveness, laws like the law of control, the law of intelligent practice, the law of expectancy. I was able to see how those, no matter what their background was, those who identified and treated these laws with respect, they were able to go on and lead successful lives. So pick up this book, and you can go ahead and pick it up at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, RalphGravesJr.com, where anywhere where fine books are sold. Thank you.
There are 7.7 billion people on Earth today. 40% of these people are under the age of 25. Young adults are the most fertile mission field in the world today. In Scripture, we see Jesus pouring his life into 12 young adults who he equipped to change the world and all of history. Like Jesus, we believe that the best approach to reach the world with the gospel is to invest in young, emerging leaders and equip them to build disciple-making movements. Concentric is the notion of surrounding and sharing a common center. Our center is the model and strategy of Jesus for both leadership development and ministry formation. As a global alliance, we provide equipping in biblical leadership based on Jesus' example in the New Testament. Jesus modeled for us how to make disciples that reproduce. Focusing on leadership development is key to creating movements that spread the gospel and Jesus' disciple-making strategy to young leaders around the globe. Our Ministry Alliance partners are actively equipping leaders and building movements of multiplication that reproduce the life of Christ. Join us today to equip young leaders with Jesus' strategy that will change cities and nations.
The session that we had with BCAT was really entertaining and enlightening. We were able to put together some very specific steps that we as individuals can take, and it was really fun to all come together and see sort of where we're going as a team and how we can all get there together.
We had a tremendous experience with the BCAT partners. One of the challenges that we have as an organization is to make sure that we have the right people in the right chairs doing the right thing. To do that well, you have to have synergy. You can try to dream up ways to make sure that your group does that, or you can rely on experts. We would recommend BCAT partners to anybody who's looking to take their organization to the next level.
Academy Sedan and Limo is a full-service transportation company serving the Philadelphia metropolitan area with full knowledge of the New York City, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. areas. We pride ourselves on being the most dependable, conscientious company in the industry. Our always on-time service and dependable pricing make us the company to call for any event or occasion. Our vehicles can accommodate any size party for any occasion. Our vehicles range from four-door sedans to SUVs to minivans to limo buses to full-size tour buses and can accommodate groups of 2 to 100. We offer airport shuttle service or over-the-road service without limitation regarding mileage or time, and no drive is too long or too far. So if you find yourself in need of transportation of any type with any vehicle, give us a call at 610-842-4564 and let us show you what a real transportation company can do for you.
Use code ACADEMY2020 to receive 20% off your first 3 rides, including parking and tolls.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Today's show is sponsored by Dr. Jacalyn. Take charge of your life personally, financially, and professionally. Visit drjacalyn.com to book an appointment today.
Welcome back to our program, Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, live on Business Talk Radio, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. I don't want to forget our friends at Twitch. So we are here with Mr. Cini, my co-host, and Ms. Linda Descano, and we were having a lively conversation. I think we want to move on to Zoom tips and tricks.
We do, and you know, I'm the ghost of Jeffrey Toobin kind of cast the pall over everything. I mean, Linda, you were mentioning that people are working more inside their own personal space, which means the distance that used to exist between where you work and where you live is now all of a sudden shrunk to 0. Now that means we should be comfortable with that on the one hand. And we should face that and accept that and be authentic about that. But on the other hand, maybe we shouldn't just go straight from the kitchen to the camera. Maybe we ought to stop somewhere in between and sort things out. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we have to be cognizant when you're on Zoom or any video conference, like you're on, and you should always check your device to see, is your camera on? Is your microphone on? And you know, what I encourage people to do is, you know, yes, we're going to have our pets and our children and, you know, roommates, partners in there, and that's part of life, and they're not going to be silent all the time. But it's important for us to be present when we are in work mode, and if we are going to be on a video conference, to really focus. And that means, for me, shutting down my email system, shutting down my internal chat channel. So I'm being present with my colleagues and my clients and really bringing like my best self, and I can be an active listener. I could stay focused and not multitask and doing other things. So I think that's like one of the most important things to keep in mind, and to, you know, be sure if you do have to pause to answer your child's question or to maybe let your dog out in the yard, that you just say, I'm going to step away, and really do check that you've muted and shut your video off before you step away. But I think we should all focus on what is appropriate office behavior and carry that into our personal stage. I also think, because, you know, when we're looking at the screen for so many hours in a day, it's also important for us to schedule in, you know, break time so that we can refresh, get our perspective back before we go to the next call. So I know I'm trying to end all 60-minute meetings in 50 minutes so people can take a breath before they're going. So we're not back to back. I think there are just some ways we can bring and maintain our mental health and well-being, as we're going from one call to another. I think something else to consider, those of us, the three of us obviously like to talk because we're on this program, but not all of our colleagues, not all of our clients are comfortable sort of, just, raising their hand and inserting their voice into the conversation. So if we are leading a conversation on a video conference, it's important for us to try to make it a safe space for everyone and give people the option of using a chat if they're more comfortable expressing their ideas, or if someone is dominating and you haven't heard from someone else, just to say, oh, Dr. Jacalyn, I haven't heard from you yet today. Did you want to build on something that Al said? And to create a sense of inclusion and be sure that we're inviting everyone to bring ideas forward, so it doesn't become dominated by one voice, and giving people as much flexibility as we can to get the best, because we know when we have diverse opinions and really constructively challenge ideas, we're going to walk away with the strongest solutions for a client and to solve a problem.
One thing I was going to mention, and it's actually happening to me right now, is I was told that proper etiquette when you're on a video call is that you have to look at the light at your camera. And so I've been trying to do that more and more, as opposed to looking down at you or looking over, but it hurts your eyes after a certain amount of time. And I think that people are going to have vision problems.
It's hard, but
it is very hard.
Microsoft has a solution for that. They have a new laptop now that adjusts your eye lines so that it always looks like you're looking at the camera, even though you're looking at different people's faces elsewhere on the screen.
Oh, I love that.
It's very clever.
That's great.
That's a really good point. And that is something, because it feels odd just looking at the camera when you want to look at someone's face, because we know that's the polite thing to do.
Right.
But it is being cognizant of that. And I always say, before getting on any video conference, is to open up the link if you can and see how you appear. Do you have to raise your laptop? Do you need additional lighting? Double check all the other devices, your phone, your tablet, that can create noise. I asked my husband, because he's working from home today, could you shut your door? Could you, reduce the volume on your phone so it doesn't carry over? But the reality is there's construction, right? There will be fire engines and police sirens. Your dog may decide just now is the perfect time to have a conversation with you. And we have to also give ourselves permission to, have those things that we would never expect that our pets would do, our children may say, and that's okay. And, it is, don't be embarrassed by it, just own it and move on, because we're all in the same situation, and we need to give each other permission to just, give a chuckle and not get, really distracted and let it disarm us.
Well, we're out of the
We have a couple of comments from Mindy. Movie stars learned how to look straight into the camera. We can too. That's great. And
spot on.
And from Chris at Business Talk Radio, who's taking us out over the airwaves, he said that maybe we should learn to wear clothes when we're going to be on Zoom. So
I think that's a great suggestion, Chris. Thank you very much.
All those things we didn't think we would have to reinforce that suddenly become important to remind folks of.
One thing I wanted to share. Oh, sorry, Al, go ahead.
Sure, no, I just wanted to say that about 80% of what we communicate is nonverbal. And that's why this is such an important conversation to have. I mean, you may think that you're not saying something and therefore you're not communicating. But when I look at you in a Zoom meeting, if I see a mess behind you, or if I see that you don't look organized, or what you're telling me is that you don't really care. I mean, you may not mean that, but that's what I'm seeing.
Right.
Absolutely. We've talked about that, Al. I was sharing an anecdote that I was on the phone with someone who was a potential vendor, and all I could see behind him were clothes hanging off of his stationary bike. And clothes on the floor, and it just was so distracting. I could not process anything that he said to me. So I think it's always important to check your background, because you want to project a sense of calm and confidence, but you want your client, your colleagues to be able to listen to your message. And so doing that survey and creating an environment about you. Plus, I think it helps me stay organized if everything is organized around me. But that's a really good point.
Mindy has another question, which I think is really valid. Let's weigh in on this. Can we use virtual backgrounds that are professional, Dr. J? Is that okay? So I have seen many times, and not necessarily in a business call, but I also lead yoga and meditation, and people will Zoom in, and they have backgrounds that are, they've got the giant halo over their head, and you see them going in and out of. So what are your thoughts if you don't have a green screen and you're going to use a virtual background, but you don't actually look as good as you probably could or as professional? Do you think you should still use the background, or should you go with whatever reality is for you?
Yeah, I will use a virtual, like a branded background with the Red Havas branding in some settings. But, I will see if it looks like I'm going in and out. I opt to change where I'm sitting, like where I am today, and not have it, because it can be very distracting if, you see shadows that it creates. I think you just have to look. I believe in being very simple. It's one thing if you're doing a virtual happy hour with your colleagues and everyone has a fun background, and that's part of the experience. But if you're doing something for business, I would say keep it simple. Some video conferences offer you the opportunity to blur your background, which could be very nice. Just gives you a little bit more privacy, but it's not going to look alien as you move around.
Makes sense. Al, what do you think?
I know we're going to be heading into a break, but before we do that, I just wanted to say that when you look like me, what you really need is a Zoom foreground. I need a Brad Pitt foreground that I can superimpose. I'm waiting on that. After a while, I think the backgrounds become tiresome and tedious, and I think you're better off looking for a place where you can use your real background. It's not that hard. Just find a blank wall somewhere. But, this gets back to your point, Linda. It's hard to imagine doing business with somebody who is surrounded by clutter and doesn't seem to care about that.
One thing I wanted to share with you, which I hadn't actually thought of, but I mentioned to you, I didn't mention, I got my certification for meditation and for yoga during this pandemic. And so there were people from all over the world who were taking these programs. And I never thought to myself that there are people who are literally during this pandemic in one room. And they're in one room with other people. And, think about if you have a studio apartment in Manhattan or somewhere else, but they don't have the luxury of moving around because they're just in that one room and they're sharing it with somebody else. So I forget about that a lot of times because I'm lucky that I have space that I can move around. So I think that makes it challenging. But
It does.
Go ahead, Linda. Do you want to weigh in on that?
No, it absolutely does make it challenging. And, I know people in that situation, and sometimes they rotate sides of the apartment that they will be in, and have gotten very creative with decorative sheets that you can hang up that create just a calm background and sort of, hide other things that could be on the wall.
And Chris from Business Talk Radio, he's put into the chat that if you want to be professional, get a screen made instead of virtual. So I have a green screen and I really like it. I have to share, though, that it is a lot of work. And it's a lot of work because it's absolutely enormous. And when I have to put it up, when I'm not doing my interviews 2 days a week, I like to not have it up anymore because I'm tired of looking at it. I want to see the outside. But it's so large and it gets... it's a tripod, but sometimes when you start moving the curtain over, the whole thing starts to move. So it already crashed into one table. I've got 2 glass tables on either side. And anyway, then you have to get the computer a certain way and you have to have the lighting a certain way. And it's just, it is a lot of work, but it does I think it makes the background look more professional because you don't have a lot of that pixelation that you have sometimes with the virtual backgrounds.
Yeah.
That's all. That's my piece on it.
That's a good one.
So, we're going to take a break.
Yeah, I just want to say that I know the break is valuable, but before we take that break, when we come back, I want to hear what your grandmother, Linda, would have to say about people who get in front of a Zoom camera and don't bother to clean things up behind them when they do. Because I'm sure your grandmother has instructive lessons for us on that.
Definitely.
Great.
I can't wait to hear it either. And remember, you can call in 631-730-5468. Chris is patiently waiting there in New York to take your calls and bring you onto the airwaves. So if you've got a question for Linda, please call in, or also put comments into Facebook or YouTube. And we will be right back on Business Talk Radio with Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn and Linda Descano and Al Cini. Stay with us.
Thanks, everybody.
Have you ever tried to build people into a team? Maybe you've tried bowling, or ziplining, or paintball, or pizza making. These events can be fun, and they can make everybody happy for a while. But in the long run, do they really turn people into a team? Now, imagine the members of your team scattered all over the world, working from trains and airplanes, from remote offices, client locations, or working from home. How do you build a winning team when your playing field might be the entire world? With BCAT, we've created the answer. Working completely online, no matter where your people are, we turn them into an engaged and motivated team in 3 simple steps. First, we use the BCAT survey, which they can take online, anywhere, anytime, to reveal the North Star that represents their shared pride in the work they do. Next, we work with your team's leaders and stakeholders to convert that North Star into a role target, an ideal virtual person who represents your team's best self, living its best day at work. With our internet tools, we hang your North Star high in the sky, where everyone on your team can see it, no matter where in the world they might be. Then we guide and help everyone on your team in creating personal plans to align themselves with your team's North Star. We help each of them develop the positive habits that, day by day, every day, steer them closer to your North Star, aligning themselves with your team's signature dreams and ideals. And over the long haul, we offer programs and coaching techniques that help them stick to their plans. Remote team building isn't hard, it doesn't take long, and it's just as much fun as pizzas and paintball. You build winning teams around a purpose, not a place. BCAT is the answer.
Have you just lost your job or have been laid off and you are looking to transition to a new job or career? Maybe you have even tried submitting tons of applications and yet you keep getting turned down for jobs you qualify for. Don't wait until you become overwhelmed with rejections when you can easily transition or get your dream job. Let MJW Careers guide you to the right career path and a better, brighter future. At MJW Careers, we know what hiring managers are looking for, and our goal is to land you the job you deserve. What makes MJW Careers a wonderful provider over other services is our pragmatic and scientific approach to resume writing. There are rules, there are visual cues, there are content best practices. We understand those and work within the boundaries to ensure our clients' messaging appeals to the decision makers. Our career consultants will help you transition into new roles quickly and effectively. With our experience in virtually every industry, we will provide direction in the frustrating job market by helping you write a customized, professional resume and prepare you for your interview as well. Join the great number of people we have helped scale up to greater things in their careers. Let us help you on your career journey. Come visit us, www.jobstickers.com, to learn more and grab a free resume review or ebook.
RVN TV is a platform for people of any industry to share their story. Over 285,000 viewers are tuning in to RVN TV shows monthly. We guarantee a great experience that you'll be sharing with everyone you know while increasing your personal and company's brand awareness. But what is your brand? According to Forbes, it's a combination of your logo, your product, your design and feel, and your personality. Did you know that aside from being a guest, we offer even more opportunity to boost your brand? Adding your company logo and website on screen during your interview will allow viewers to recognize your brand instantly. Incorporating images and video clips is another great way to showcase your product during your live segment. Let viewers see how good you really are. And most importantly, there's you and your interview. For less than the cost of a newspaper, direct mail, or a magazine ad, you can leave our studio and within 48 hours have a permanent digital copy of your live segment to link to your social media, embed into your company website, or use in email marketing. Investing in your brand is so very important, and we can't wait to have you as a guest.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Well, through the power of technology, I managed to bring us back. I almost lost us there for a short second. But we are on Business Talk Radio, rapping with Dr. Jacalyn, with my co-host, Mr. Al Cini, and our special guest, Linda Descano. And I understand there's some stories that we're going to hear about your grandmother?
Yes, well, I have to say, when Al asked about clutter was something that my grandmother was very passionate about. And but her definition of clutter might vary from what others is. So my best story is I was helping her clean her house, and one of my aunts had all like 5 or 6 different perfume bottles on their bureau, and they were like, one was a third full, one was a half full, and my grandma was like, too much, this is clutter. So she just started just mixing them together to consolidate all of the contents into 2 or 3. Needless to say, my aunt did not appreciate that when she came home, and I won't go into the war of words that was exchanged between them, but that was my grandmother. She liked everything neat and orderly, but she was also known to do that with different types like iced tea, lemonade, high C, which was very popular when I was growing up. If it was in the refrigerator and those bottles of juice were half full, we got some interesting concoctions at her house. So you always asked.
I have to say this: don't touch my perfume and don't touch my Chardonnay. I don't
always ask.
What kind of an explosion do you get when you mix Elizabeth Taylor with Coco Chanel? I got
Can you just imagine?
I have no idea. It sounds like a horrible catastrophe.
It is a legend. But what my grandmother did instill in us, because Al, you started the show talking about how words matter. And she always would say, the more you listen, the more you learn, and the more you talk, the more mistakes you make. So she always encouraged us to really be thoughtful, to actively listen, really listen to understand, not just to validate what we were saying, and to be really thoughtful in our selection of words, because we're more likely to overstate, we're more likely to maybe embellish and stretch the truth. So she really encouraged us to be active listeners and a conversationalist and engage in dialogue, but really listen to learn.
That is great wisdom. I remember my mother once told me, you can't learn anything about anybody if all you do is talk about yourself all day. And what they're really doing is telling us the same thing over and over again. And these are great lessons we could learn at any age that'll make our lives much better. And I want to follow up on a comment Mindy made earlier too, that she asked me to restate that quote that I heard on television. If you think 2021 is about getting back to 2019, then you completely miss the lessons of 2020. And it is true. I mean, it's all about moving forward. And moving forward means rethinking the way you got where you are so that maybe where you go next year is a better place. Real quick, I know we're coming up on that part of the program where you get to tell everybody how to reach you. What kinds of organizations ought to be calling you for advice these days, Linda?
We work with organizations of every sort of a type, from startups to, global multinational companies, from for-profit companies to those in the not-for-profit space, to multilateral institutions and government. I think for us, the common thread is organizations that really want to live their purpose, to bring their purpose forward, and want to look at the communications in a very holistic way, because the reality is it's not just that different media channels, whether it's print or digital or TV or social, they're all merged. It's one experience to the consumer, but also what's internal is external. So how do you really align all of your messaging so it is as relevant as possible to all the audiences you want to reach, and you're maximizing all the different touch points you have with those audiences, so you're surrounding them and bringing them value, and they understand not only your products and services work, but how you are delivering that value add and using your profits for purpose to create a better community for your employees and for communities where you operate.
Very important.
Yeah, I love that. I'm wondering, since we reviewed our word for 2020, what is your word for 2021?
Oh, for me, it's about Propel. It's about, my mantra is Propel with purpose. So for me, 2021 is all about moving forward. It's about using the lessons in 2020 as a springboard. It's how can I propel myself forward? How can I propel my colleagues and mentees forward? How can I help my community and the organizations I work with? It's about springing into action and embracing, the new.
That's terrific. How about you, Mr. Cini?
Well, you mean what's up for me with 2021? What do I think is 2021?
Well, your word. If you think of, can you just put in?
I think creativity is my word for 2021. I think it's time to make new things, not just rehash old things. So that, for me anyway, is the promise of the new year. How about you, Dr. Jacalyn?
Well, when I think about this year and just combining the meditation and the yoga and the coaching, I kind of think of three things, and then I'll go from there. So self-care, self-love, and self-compassion, I think, are really important in this year. And I think next year, the word would be action or movement. Let's get out there and make things happen.
Great.
So, Linda, how can people reach you?
They can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm under Linda Descano, or on Twitter, also ampersand Linda Descano. And I hope people will reach out. And if you do on LinkedIn, please indicate that you've met me through this show.
And by the way, let's just talk about LinkedIn for a moment. You have over 171,000 followers. How does that happen, Linda?
Well, it's been a steady build, but it really is about listening and trying to deliver content that's meaningful for me and hopefully meaningful to others, and sharing my point of view, but also trying to use my network and my knowledge to help others in their career journey.
Excellent. And I always like to ask our guests, what's next for you?
Next for me, it's always about this journey of self-improvement. And so for me, it's continuing to learn. I'm just always looking for new experiences. And, this year it's about, for me, it has been about getting my fitness level back and strength training. And I hope 2021 will be about regaining my running ability, which I seem to have lost a little bit, and spending more time, exploring now that we're back in Philadelphia, just the trails and all the beauty that's in this area.
Great.
That sounds very exciting.
Great ideas for 2021 for everybody.
Yes, fitness is very important. Well, Linda, thank you for being on our program. We hope you'll come back and visit with us again and find out what you've been up to next year. And
I would love that. Thank you.
That's perfect. So Al and I will see you backstage. We'll be there in a minute. So, Mr. Cini, another great guest, a wonderful person that you brought with us today. You're really good at building relationships with people. You're very trustworthy and you're somebody that people want to get to know and have in their life. So, thank you for that. And
thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that, Doc.
Any final words you have today for our viewers and our listeners?
No, just make sure that you tune in again next Wednesday. We've got another great guest. And And you've got all those other shows you do all week too that people really need to get to know you. And what's new, by the way? You've got your own channel on Business Talk Radio now.
Yes, as of Friday, the shows for Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn are going to be on Studio 6. So you can go to businesstalkradio1.com, and Studio 6 will be playing Rapping with Dr. Jacalyn. So we now have the business show Wednesday at 2. We have the dating show. It's all about dating, and that's Thursday at 4. And by the way, tomorrow we have 2 dynamic guests. I can't even believe this. Janice and Carly Spindell. They are matchmakers to the stars. They are responsible for over 4,000 marriages. I spoke with Janice yesterday. She is a real hoot, so I'm looking forward to that.
That should be a lot of fun.
Should be really good. And then Friday we have our original show, which is all about hope and inspiration and stories of overcoming adversity. And then our new show is the variety show. So we've got some great guests coming up. So you'll be able to hear the old shows as well as the new shows.
So your own channel on Business Talk Radio, RWDJ, all the way every day.
That's right.
So cool.
I think it's pretty cool. I'm excited. So, so Mr. Cini, thank you again for being on the program, and to everybody out there who's watching and listening, we certainly appreciate your loyalty. We appreciate you tuning in, spreading the word. And also, if you're interested in being a sponsor or you want to be a guest, just go to drjacalyn.com, reach out, and we'll get back to you. So that's a wrap for today. Thank you again for tuning in. And also thank you to Chris Roberts there on Long Island, taking us out over the airwaves. It's always a pleasure to work with you, Chris. You do a great job.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, everybody. That's a wrap.